Caroline, great to have you here. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt, great to have you here.
Great to have you. Great to be with you. Thank you, David.
Let me ask you real quick. Here's the first question. Okay, how much sleep do you get? Let's just get right to the bottom line here. I mean, I'm going 4 hours, and I think that's high. I think it's less. What's the over/under? What are you getting tonight? Come on.
Oh man, it's a little bit over actually. It's usually about 5 to 6 hours a night is what I'm doing, which is all we need. As President Trump says, when you love your job and you love your life, you don't need to sleep much. And that's what we're doing. We're just working all the time. So we're up early, we stay late, and we don't sleep much, but we're having a lot of fun here.
I bet you are. Let's get right into it. The mom, the mom in you, right? There you are. Yeah, everybody talks about White House Press Secretary. Hey, you're a mom first. And trying to juggle both. And I know you've talked about the kind of how families been helping out, which is great. What about just kind of from an emotional standpoint, kind of dealing with, this job, which is 24/7, and mom life, which can be 24/7 as well? How are you kind of dealing with that? I feel like Oprah when I ask this question.
Yeah, it's certainly challenging. There's no doubt about it. I think every working mother understands the demands, and no matter where you are or what you're doing, there is a sense of guilt. You feel like when you're with your baby, you should be focused on your job, and when you're at your job, you want to be with your baby. So there's always that pull, but just being present in the moment and prioritizing time, saying no when you have to say no to take care of your family is something I've had to learn the hard way in a very short amount of time. But I spend every second that I possibly can with my son when I'm home. On weekends and evenings, I try to make it home for bedtime as much as I can throughout the week and savoring those very special moments as well. And I'm very blessed to have a great support system, an incredible husband who's the best father to our little son, and my mother who comes to town quite often, and other help as well that can be there to nurture and to be there when I can.
Let me ask you, let's go down memory lane for a second, okay? You love your parents. Your parents, they're hardworking, blue collar. I mean, it's a blue collar family from a blue collar town.
Yeah.
What did that teach you? How did that shape you as to who you are today?
It definitely taught me the value of hard work. You know, my parents are small business owners. Neither of them went to college, and they worked very hard to earn everything they had to provide for my brothers and me. You know, growing up, my dad was always working from 7 to 7 days a week. Being a business owner, you don't have days off. And so I think that value of hard work and determination and drive was instilled in me at a very young age just by watching my parents work so hard to earn a living. And it carried with me through college and then, of course, now in my career as well.
Your Catholic education, you've talked about this before, about how it shaped who you are today. Tell us about that. How so? Because the Catholic education was very important. Your Catholicism growing up, God, church, very important to you.
Yes, my faith is incredibly important to me. I would argue now more than ever, being in a role that is very demanding and at times controversial, and there's a lot of public pressure and discussion online about who you are and your family, and it could be difficult for someone who doesn't have faith, but with faith, all things are possible. And my Catholic education was a pivotal part of my upbringing. It definitely teaches discipline, is something you learn in Catholic schools. And then I obviously went to a Catholic college as well, St. Anselm in New Hampshire, which not only drove my faith further, but also introduced me to the world of politics and news.
Yeah. How did it drive your faith further, you think, at St. Anselm? You had challenges there, I guess.
Yeah, I think so. And just being in a community that embraces faith and talks about it openly and opens your eyes to it, and also being around fellow students and peers who aren't afraid to go to church on Sunday and talk about their faith openly is something that I think is helpful to anyone in their own faith journey.
Well, let's talk about St. Anselm for a second. All right, I was going through box scores of the college softball St. Anselm team. I was literally seeing, I saw you got a couple of home runs.
They weren't very good.
Yeah, but here's the thing. I mean, you were in a lot of those games, and you were hitting, you had some home runs and the whole thing. I mean, you went there on a scholarship. Now you're in the rough and tumble world of politics. Talk about that. Yeah. Sports and politics. You could probably learn a lot of life lessons about politics from sports. Tell me a little bit about how that serves you maybe today.
100%. The game of softball and sports prepared me for the game of politics, no doubt about it. I was a competitive athlete growing up, not just softball. I played field hockey and played many different sports throughout my childhood, but did go to St. Anselm on a softball scholarship. And again, discipline, hard work, teamwork, and also competing against yourself to be the best that you can in athletics, I think has prepared me, especially for this job now. You know, I can have a good briefing, but the next day I can go on television. I have to perform again, right? So every day is a new game in this job. And I think, you know, being an athlete my whole life probably prepared me for this.
Yeah, let's talk about politics for a second. Your communication colleague, Taylor Budowich, said this about you. He says, Caroline, he was being very complimentary, he said, Caroline has an iron stomach for Trump politics. And I was like, I've got to ask her, so what does that mean exactly, an iron stomach for Trump politics?
Yeah, that's very kind of Taylor to say. He's our deputy chief of staff, and he's doing a phenomenal job. We have an amazing team here at the White House, and we're all having a lot of fun together working. We're with each other all day long, so it's very good that we have a great team.
Yeah, you better like each other.
Yeah. As for the iron stomach comment, I mean, I think it's a tough business, politics, and you can't get knocked down by what people say online or, you know, the negativity. You just have to know that you're doing your job and doing it at the best of your ability and speaking the truth, and that's what I try to do every day.
Yeah, speaking about that criticism, the press briefings, you know, the critics are, you know, always be out for anyone really behind that podium.
Yes.
But they obviously want to take shots at you, and yet you guys are praying before those prayer briefings. That's my understanding. Those prayer briefings, those press briefings.
They are prayer briefings.
Yeah, they are. Well, tell me about the prayer briefing before the press briefing. Take us inside. Give us some color as to why you wanted to do that and what that's like right before the door opens, if you will.
Sure. Well, before briefings, it's a little bit chaotic and overwhelming because there's so much news to consume. And so all morning long, my team and I are prepping. And, you know, I feel like sometimes an internal investigative reporter going around to all the policy experts and whomever in the building, including the president himself, to get his take on the news of the day before we go out. So I think that team prayer before is just a moment to be silent and still and ask God for confidence and the ability to articulate my words, knowledge, prayer, protection. And it is a nice moment to reset. It's the last thing I do before I go out there, and then it just gives me the confidence to do a briefing.
It's warfare out there. You know, in Christian terms, people will call what's happening in our country today spiritual warfare. Do you see it in those terms, kind of good versus evil out there, and you know that context? How do you see that?
I certainly believe in spiritual warfare, and I think I saw it firsthand, especially throughout the campaign trail with President Trump. And I think there certainly were evil forces, and I think that the president was saved by the grace of God on July 13th in Butler, Pennsylvania, and he's in this moment for a reason. We're all here for a reason, and I think it's a miraculous thing that has taken place in our country.
Speaking about here for a reason, let's talk about you for a moment, because you and I go back to when you were running for Congress, and you win the primary, you lose the general, and you're wondering, now what? And look at the now what? Look at the ... that God has done. How do you see it in terms of spiritual terms, of your faith, and how God has been working this kind of for such a time as this?
Well, certainly God has a plan for everyone. I believe that firmly, and you just have to trust his lead and have faith that everything will work out. And when he closes a door, it's because he's opening another. And for me, that was my congressional campaign. I aspired to be a congresswoman and had a great primary victory, as you mentioned, and unfortunately lost the general election, or should I say fortunately, because it now led me to this opportunity. And I wouldn't have worked on the president's campaign as his spokeswoman if I was serving in Congress. And then I probably wouldn't be the White House press secretary either. So God knew what he was doing, I believe. And you just have to trust the process and trust that he's working in your life, and stay grounded in your faith throughout the way. You're
27, Gen Z. You know, there's a spiritual revival, it seems, in this country right now, especially in the youth. We've seen this at college campuses all over the country, really. What do you attribute that to? Is there a spiritual revival going on in America, or at least wanting to begin in America?
I think so, especially amongst younger generations. You see the videos of college students worshiping on their campuses, many students getting baptized in the middle of their campus. It's a really beautiful sight. I think people are moving closer to God, and I hope that they are. I pray that they do.
Do you think President Trump is part of that in terms of ushering in this renewal, this spiritual revival, some of his policies? And do you think that kind of goes hand in hand?
Mm-hmm. I would say so. I think the president has been a great voice for young people, and he believes in young people, he loves young people, and he's leading for them to leave our country better off for future generations. His policies are uplifting all Americans, but particularly, he wants young people to live in a country where the American dream is renewed and restored for them and their families. And those traditional yet common sense basic American values that President Trump believes in, faith and family and freedom, I think are starting to resonate with a lot of young people across the country.
Talk a little bit about the White House Faith Office. I mean, that's a big deal. There's been faith initiatives before. There's been faith offices before, but to do it in the West Wing.
Yeah.
That's huge. I mean, proximity is everything. Can you talk a little bit about the impact you believe that faith office will have on policies, not just out of the White House, but in really every cabinet agency?
Pastor Paula White and her team are doing an amazing job leading up the White House Faith Office, and the president has entrusted her for many years. They've been close friends. But now, again, as you said, the proximity to the Oval Office and the leader of the free world is a promise President Trump made on the campaign trail, and he has delivered on that promise. And we see Pastor White in the West Wing all the time, past her in the hallways, and just ran into her in the ladies' room the other day. She is amazing, and she's doing great work. She's brought in faith leaders, not just from the evangelical community, but from the Catholic Church, the Jewish faith, Muslim faith, all across the country have ascended here at the White House for listening sessions, and so that way they can go out to their congregations and their churches across the country and spread the word of this administration, as well as the word of God, to their audiences, which is, the most powerful thing I think that she can do is spreading the administration's message and President Trump's agenda.
Yeah, there are a lot of viewers that will watch this who have seen some of the praise and worship actually coming out of the White House.
Yeah.
I mean, that she's doing that. That's got to be pretty significant, the fact that that's actually happening inside this White House, especially after the last 4 years.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Yeah.
It's a big deal.
Yeah. Let me ask you about the press, obviously.
Sure.
Let's start with this. I mean, look, you study this not just in college, but after that. Mm-hmm. Look, the truth of the matter is, I believe that we're in the age of what I like to call the correspondent. A correspondent by day and a pundit by night, and it's just not fair to the American people. Like, what are you exactly? And I'm just wondering, do you believe political journalism is dead in America today? How do you feel about that?
I think there are true journalists out there that still exist. They are few and far between. I think many people in the briefing room here are trying out for their next big show, and unfortunately it seems the legacy media, the big networks in this country, promote individuals who are liberal and have a bias against this president. There's no doubt about that. But the American people aren't buying that anymore. If you look at the ratings chart, liberal outlets are dying and have been forced to restructure their newsrooms and their lineup. The Washington Post, we applaud Jeff Bezos for the changes he's made because he was no longer selling newspapers because of the liberal bias that has had a chokehold on that paper in particular. So I think the media has had to take a look in the mirror, especially after President Trump's resounding victory on November 5th. And the American public sent a very strong message to the anti-Trump media that we don't listen to you. We believe in the truth, and we know that the president's policies were better for us than the past 4 years under the Biden-Harris administration. And that's why the American people reelected this president. And it's an honor, frankly, to fight against some of those very hostile media forces every day on behalf of the president and truth.
It's an honor. You say it's an honor because why? You believe that I'll let you say why exactly, but what? Is that because you feel like truth is going to prevail coming from that podium? Or what's the reason why you call it an honor, I guess is my question.
Well, it's an honor that President Trump has entrusted me and has the confidence in me to speak on his behalf and on behalf of the White House. But it is also an honor, as you said, to get the truth out there and get the message of the White House and this team out there and do it to the best of my ability.
So how do you go about, like, you're looking out into the crowd there, in the press briefing room and everything. I mean, how are you kind of deciding who you're going to pick? You know, I mean, because you pick different people. Some people you pick kind of routinely, but other people you just kind of be around the room. How does that kind of work? Is that kind of impromptu or what?
It's completely impromptu. Sometimes I'll know who will be sitting particularly in the front rows based on who I've seen throughout the day. In the morning, they come up to my office to ask questions, but I just walk in there and pick on whomever I feel compelled to choose, and we go from there.
The reviews on you, and even well, there's always going to be critics, okay, but even the friendly reviews and even people that are lukewarm on you say you're doing a really good job. What is it? Why do you believe that is the case? Why do you think that you have arrived in this moment for such a time as this? Like, what's going on? What's the DNA behind all of that?
Well, it's a lot of preparation, and I don't just walk out there and start talking. There's a lot of studying and reading and prep that goes into the briefings in particular, and every day, even on non-briefing days. It's constant reading and keeping up with the news and talking to the president and understanding where his head is at on the top issues of the day. And it's a great team. We have an incredible team here at the White House, and many of us worked on the campaign together. So there's a bit of a battle rhythm to our movement here, and having fun as well, and keeping it all in perspective, and not getting complacent, and knowing that every day, as I said, is a new game and a new challenge, and just putting our best foot forward.
When you call on reporters, are you already kind of gaming out in your head, oh, okay, I know where they're going to go today? Do you kind of think that through?
Oftentimes the questions are predictable. If you just look at the MSDNC Chiron, you'll know where some of the reporters in that room are going to go.
Right. Let me read you something that Peter Baker from the New York Times, I'm sure one of your favorites, has said, but let me just read this real quick, and I want to get your reaction. He says this about the White House press shop, quote, "It's clear they're sending a message. If we write or broadcast something they don't like, we can be punished by having access to the pool cut off. There's nothing subtle about it." You say what to that?
That is utter fallacy and completely ridiculous. We have expanded the pool to new voices, independent journalists, podcasters, social media content creators, while continuing to invite legacy media outlets like the one Peter Baker works for, the New York Times, are still in the briefing room, still have access to the press pool, and we are going to continue to move forward with this method. We have received thousands of applications of legitimate independent journalists across the country who were never respected by the White House Correspondents Association. And the privilege of covering the President of the United States on Air Force One or in the Oval Office should not be granted by or chosen by a few elitist journalists in Washington, D.C. That privilege belongs to the American public. And so we are ensuring that new media voices who are responding to the media habits of the American people are included in this process, and it's been phenomenally successful.
I've never quite understood, the White House Correspondents Association has made a big stink about the Associated Press being, kicked out of the pool, but there are other White House Correspondents Association members in the pool, like every day.
They're all still in the pool.
Yeah, they're in the pool.
The reason the Associated Press has not joined us in the Oval Office or aboard Air Force One is because we are in current litigation battle with them in court, which they filed against us, which we don't believe they have any basis to do so because they still have access to the White House complex. And there are thousands of journalists who have access to the White House complex who have never received the same privilege that the Associated Press and many other legacy outlets have of going into the Oval Office every time the president does a press conference. And what gives one outlet the need or the right to do that more than another? We want equal opportunity for all of the outlets who are committed to covering this president with accuracy and transparency, and that's what we're doing.
You talked about the liberal media before you took this job. I mean, you've been talking about the liberal media for a while. Now that you've seen it up close, exactly what you thought? Worse than you thought? What do you think?
Oh man, that's a good question. I think I've been dealing with them for quite some time, so I knew what to expect coming into this role. And I think you have to really focus on the premise of their question, because they will inject their own bias into that premise, and you have to go after that premise when they're asking questions.
That's interesting. So going after the bias, kind of seeing that and be able to kind of filter through that,
right,
is what you're saying. Let me ask you just a news of the day question, just one actually, and it's about judges. We were talking to Alan Dershowitz the other day. He believes that these judges that are doing all of these federal injunctions, district judges that are doing these federal injunctions, are part of the resistance movement against Trump.
Totally.
Do you see it that way?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Just look at the numbers. The Trump administration, we have faced thus far in 2 months more than 30 injunctions by activist judges. The Biden administration in 3 years only had 15 injunctions. So we have doubled the amount of injunctions that the Biden administration had in 3 years in just 2 months. And why? It's because you have judges who are acting as activists behind the bench who don't like President Trump. Almost every single one of them is a registered Democrat, has been involved in Democrat campaigns or causes, have donated to Democrat candidates. Some of them have even put their anti-Trump bias on social media. They have not been shy about their hatred for this president and his policies, and they are abusing their judicial power. They are trying to overstep the authority of the executive branch and the powers given to the president in Article 2 of the Constitution. Luckily for us, and unfortunately for these judges, President Trump knows how to fight back. He fought against witch hunts throughout the entirety of his campaign. He won court cases. He fought off a weaponized justice system. And that's why he's here, to ensure this ends. And particularly with the case against the Alien Enemies Act and the president's use of that authority, which is granted to him by law. It's completely absurd. You have a judge who is trying to say the president of the United States cannot deport foreign terrorists, illegal immigrants from our nation's soil. If the president can't do that, the American people are in a lot of trouble. So a lot of these cases, all of them, are complete lunacy, and we're prepared to fight back in court to continue pursuing the president's agenda. The American people want the president to do exactly what he's doing. He campaigned on all of these policies and promises, and he's intent on delivering them.
I know a lot of the headlines have been about impeachment of these judges, but Article 3 goes right to the core of the issue, which is that Congress has the responsibility and through our Constitution to establish and regulate the court system. And I know some bills are going through Congress right now, the Rogue Rulings Act and things like that, where in essence, district judges may be able to, basically these laws would be able to take district judges and say, no, you're not going to do federal injunctions,
right,
or federal injunctions can only be limited to X, Y, and Z. Where does the White House stand on that type of movement?
The president has made it clear that he believes some of these judges do need to be impeached because they are overstepping their authority. And that's why we have 3 branches of government. They are co-equal branches of government for a reason. Checks and balances, that's what our founding fathers intended. And they would be rolling over in their graves if they saw some of these cases and some of these judges who are being judicial activists rather than true arbiters of the law and trying to stop the president of the United States from executing his agenda.
Yeah. As we wrap up here, going back to my Dr. Phil hat here, has there been a rough day so far, or maybe a day that you're really proud of? Like, does something stick out so far in terms of something that's gone on here at the White House for you personally as White House press secretary? There's
been so many incredible moments, certainly hard days and long days and tiring days, but every day is a good day. I don't say that to be punny. It's just the truth. We're very blessed to be here and to have this opportunity. And I'm very blessed to work with a staff whom I love, and many of us are friends, and we have a great team, and working at the pleasure of a president who is fantastic to work for and is funny and fun and is having a good time while transforming our country for the better. So we're on a great ride and we're enjoying it very much.
He's making history, but so are you, the youngest press secretary, White House press secretary in the nation's history. What message is that sending to women overall, and also women that want to get into journalism, or at least pursue not just that career, but balancing mommy life and work as well? I mean, I'm just wondering, from a historical perspective, you are a trendsetter.
Well, I think it finally puts to bed the narrative that Mark Cuban wanted to push, that the president doesn't surround himself with strong and intelligent women. That is a fallacy. Not only his appointment of me as press secretary, but our chief of staff, Susie Wiles, who's the first female chief of staff in American history. Look at the women who make up his cabinet, all serving as great role models, many of them mothers, grandmothers who are doing this job at a very high level. And it's just an honor to be here.
Two last questions. What gets you, how do I say this, not emotional, but what really gets your goat, as they like to say? Like what kind of riles you up, whether it be in life or on this job or something like, you've got passion for a lot of different things. You're America first, but is there something specifically that, like, for example, I know the whole Laken Riley stuff, and just a lot of that.
Yeah.
I saw the emotion in your face with that. I mean, you were, that really got to you. And I'm just curious, is it that type of stuff? Like, what is it exactly?
Yeah, I definitely believe the illegal immigration that we've seen, because I've watched as the president has met a lot of these families throughout the campaign. And the president has gotten to know them on a very personal level, has taken out a lot of time to get to know these mothers in particular who have lost their children. And now as a mother, as myself, I cannot imagine anything like that happening, especially at the hands of someone who should have never been in our country in the first place. And it's, very upsetting, I think, to any parent to see what has happened to our country. We all want a safe and prosperous country for our children to live in. And I'm just very proud to work for a president who is determined to see that happen.
That seems to weave right into your pro-life views. You're not playing around on the life issue. You're pretty solid on that.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. Last question. There's going to be a lot of articles written about you. There already have been a lot of articles written about you, and there'll be more to come. They want to define Karoline Leavitt. How does Karoline Leavitt define Karoline Leavitt?
Oh, man, that's a very interesting
question. What kind of tree would you like to be, Karoline? No.
Oh, man. Yeah. I hope people just view me as a hard worker who wants to get the job done, and a good mother and good at my job. And I think that question has yet to be seen. We've only been here 2 months, David. Yeah. We'll sit down again in 4 years.
Fair enough. Thanks, Karoline.
Thank you.